Well, hello there. I'm sorry about that. You'll do anything in this place to entertain yourself. Hi, I'm Kurt. You may remember me from the whimsical Jacktail video that I did at the beginning of this miserable pandemic. Funny little story. I've actually been trapped in this library ever since I filmed it. All I had was my change of clothes. They locked the doors. I'll just be kind of honest. It's been a little maddening. Because I know what you're saying. You would think that, a bookworm would love being trapped in a library. All the books, a book nerd would love it. Well, to be honest, it was great for a little bit, but there's only so many fiction novels and awesome biographies, and by the time you're done with all of those, it's just books about how the dinosaurs really had feathers and how you're eventually going to get heart disease. It's not all it's cracked up to be. But as I could see from the tiny window that I actually have up here, I could see that it's actually fall outside, and I thought maybe, since I'm here, I could read you guys some spooky stories. And I know what you're thinking, that there's nothing as spooky as a library, ha 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 ha, but you know what? There isn't anything more spooky than a library at night. And I know you think, there must have been someone to die, or there must have been, somebody must have put their dog in a haunted graveyard or something for there to be ghosts, but no. There are other things that can haunt in a library. When authors put their soul into these books and they put all their thoughts and their feelings and everything inside of them, sometimes at nighttime they just decide to come alive. And I've seen it. And I know what you're thinking. It's probably because you haven't slept since August, and it's probably because you're obviously suffering from the ill effects of scurvy. But it's not. It's true. And tonight, I'm going to read you some stories from people who would agree with me. Because tonight, it is chilling tales from the Harlan County Public Library. Cue the lightning, thunder sounds. Come on, you guys had one job. Our stories for tonight come from the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark anthology, all collected by Alvin Schwartz, from the survivors, or the victims. Our first story tonight comes from a tale of two fishermen who were looking for a place to shelter from the storm, but found something much, much more terrifying. I guess they shouldn't have booked on Scare B&B. The title of our first story is called Sounds. The house was near the beach. It was a big old place where no one had lived for years. And from time to time, somebody would force open a window or a door and they would spend the night there. But never longer. 3 fishermen caught in a storm took shelter there one night. With some dry wood they found inside, they made a fire in the fireplace. They lay down on the floor and tried to get some sleep, but none of them slept that night. First they heard footsteps upstairs, and it sounded like there were several people moving back and forth, but they'd known no one had been in the house for years. When one of the fishermen calls, "Who's up there?" the footsteps stopped. That's when they heard a woman scream. And the scream turned into a groan, but then it died away, slowly. And it died away, slowly. But then they noticed that blood began to drip from the ceiling into the room where the fishermen huddled, and a small red pool formed on the floor, and it was soaked up into the wood. A door upstairs crashed shut, and again, a woman screamed, "Not me!" she cried. It sounded as if she was running, her high heels tapping wildly down the hall. "I'll get you!" a man shouted. The floor shook as he chased her. Then silence. There wasn't a sound until the man who shouted began to laugh. Long peals of horrible laughter filled the house. They went on and on and on until the fishermen thought that they would go mad. But when it finally stopped, they heard something come down the stairs, dragging something heavy, and it bumped each step. Bump, bump. Then they heard him drag it through the front hall and out the front door. Then the door opened and slammed shut. Again, silent. Suddenly a flash of lightning filled the house with a green blaze of light, and a ghastly face stared at the fishermen from the hallway. Then came a crash of thunder. Terrified, they ran into the storm to find nothing. Did these fishermen witness a ghost? Or did they sit back and allow an innocent woman to be murdered? We may never know. I guess humans may be the real monsters after all. Our next story is about a boy and his dog. But it's not like Scooby-Doo. It's more like Scooby-Don't Murder Us. Our next story is called Meet-I Doty Walker. There was a haunted house, as there always seems to be, where every night a bloody head fell down the chimney. At least that's what people said. So nobody would stay the night there, and you can't blame them. Then a rich man offered $200 to whoever would do it. And this boy said he would try if he could bring his dog with him, and so it was settled. The very next night, the boy went to the house with his dog. To make it more cheerful, he started a fire in the fireplace. Seems to be something that happens a lot in these stories. Then he sat in front of the fire and he waited, and his dog waited with him. For a while, nothing happened. But a little after midnight, he heard someone singing softly and sadly in the woods. The singing sounded something like this. Meet-I Doty Walker. It's just somebody singing, the boy told himself, but he was frightened, in spite of the perfect pitch. Then his dog answered the song. Softly and sadly it sang, Linshi, kinshi, kali, mali, dingo, dingo. Now the boy could not believe his ears because, as I can tell you, dogs don't usually talk. He'd never uttered a word before, and a few minutes later he heard the singing again, but now it was clearer and louder, and the words were the same. Meet-I Doty Walker. This time the boy tried to stop his dog from answering. He was afraid that whoever was singing would hear it and then come after, but the dog paid no attention, and again sang, Linchi, kinshi, kali, mali, dingo, dingo. A half hour later, the boy heard the singing again, and now it was in the backyard, and the song was the same. You want to sing it with me? Meet-I Doty Walker. Again, the boy tried to keep his dog quiet. He put his hand over its mouth, but he couldn't stop it, and it sang back, Linchi, kinshi, kali, mali, dingo, dingo. Soon the boy heard singing again, and it was coming down the chimney. me tight, Doty Walker. And the dog sang back, Linchy, Kinchy, Collie, Molly, Dingo, Dingo. And suddenly, a head fell down the chimney, and it missed the fire, and it landed right next to the dog, and he died instantly from fear. The boy, terrified and saddened at the same time, ran towards his dog as the head turned and stared at the boy. Slowly, it opened its mouth and screamed at the boy. Oh, it's sad to hear about the boy's dog. We should pause for a moment of silence. Our last story tonight involves a topic that I really care about, and that's dinner. The story's about a loving wife and an abusive husband who is looking for a delicious meal but may just find his just desserts. Our next tale is entitled Just Delicious. George Flint loved to eat. Each day at noon, he closed his camera shop for 2 hours and he went home for a big lunch. His wife, Mina, cooked. George was a bully. Mina was a timid woman who did everything he asked because she was afraid of him. On his way home for lunch one day, George stopped at the butcher shop and bought a pound of liver. He loved liver, and he'd have Mina cook it for dinner that night. Despite all his complaints about her, she was a very good cook. While George ate his lunch, Mina told him that a rich old woman in town had died. Her body was in the church next door. It was an open coffin, and anybody who wanted to could come by. They should go later this night. But as usual, George wasn't interested. I've got to get back to work, he told her. Make sure and work on that dinner. After he left, Mina began to cook the liver. She added vegetables and spices and simmered it all afternoon, just the way George liked it. When she thought it was done, she cut off a small piece and tasted it. It was delicious. It was the best she'd ever made. She had a second piece and then a third, and it was so good she couldn't stop. It was only when the liver was gone that she thought of George. She thought of his anger. She thought of what he would do to her. He was coming home soon. What would happen when he found out that she ate the dinner that he so wanted tonight? Some men would laugh. Oh, but not George. He would be so angry and mean. She didn't want to face it again. But where could she get another piece of liver this late in the day? And then she remembered the old woman lying in wake at the church next door. George said that he'd never tasted better liver than this. Have some liver, Mina, he said. It's delicious. I'm not hungry, she said. You go ahead and finish it. That night, after George had fallen asleep, Mina sat in bed and she tried to read. But all she could think about is what she had done. What she had done to that lady. She had desecrated a body. What had she done? And that's when she heard a voice. Who has my liver? At first, she thought she was imagining things. Maybe dreaming. Maybe she had slipped away. But she heard, who has my liver? Who has it? Tell me who has it. Mina was terrified. She wanted to run. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. Who has it? Who has my liver? I don't have your liver. I don't have your liver. Then who has my liver? Who has it? Mina froze. With terror, she couldn't do anything. Finally, loudly it said, who has it? She slowly pointed a finger at George. He has it, she said. She felt the voice in the present disappear. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, she felt a weight as George screamed! And then all the lights around them went out. Mina woke up alone. Was she better off without George, abusing her constantly? Or is she not, for having done what she did to get rid of him? There's one thing I do know. I bet George always thought he'd outlive her. He'd outlive her, his wife. Thank you guys for coming out. I hope that was as chilling as it was to you as this place is to me. And I assure you that hopefully it will be just as good in the sequel, and that maybe they won't put a mask on me or make the killer my brother or make me fight Rich Haynes in a haunted medieval times or ruin the franchise or anything of that nature. I hope everything's the same because they always seem to run. Oh!